We're going to add another section for some observations. So we'll click on Add Section. And we can simply call this Observations. Click on Next. And now we're going to have a number of headings with some details underneath. So our first one we're going to call Trends. Then press the return key 3 times. So we have 2 blank lines in between. Next one is going to be Influence. 3 returns. Improvements. 1, 2, 3. And put in the opposite team. So we are team A right now. So we put in team B results. 1, 2, 3. And lastly, other. And we can just put 1 return at the end of that. Now we're going to change the format of these headings a little bit. So we're going to just select the word or words on each line. We could select all of it, but that means we change the blank spaces in between, and we don't actually want to do that just yet. So we're going to make them bold and change the size to 14, just so they stand out a little bit. Bold 14. Bold 14. This one we have to click and drag to get all of it. Bold 14. Click underneath Trends, and we're going to do some bullets. So click on the bullet tool. And what we want to do is look at the trends of the scores that you had. And it's a little bit difficult while we're it's kind of hard to see the map with we can't move this window, unfortunately. But this is going to be helpful anyway. We're going to log in again and just load in our base map. So one way you can do it is to press on the Finder icon in the dock, so we get Be a Geographer back up. Let's double click on the ESRI shortcut again, which will take us to the home page, and sign in. They'll make us sign in again. They're just like that. So put in your class login again. And click on My Content. And you're going to see all of your class projects that have been created today. You're looking at mine, which are a little bit different. You're going to look for your names, and there's going to be possibly multiple pages, so you may need to go to page 2 to find your names. But here we are, and we want the first one. So our first one is our base map, and then the one with survey is our web mapping application, or our map journal. And if you mouse over the little triangle here, you get a few options. It's a little bit tricky, but we want to click on Open in Map Viewer. And I'm going to suggest, so that you can see your scores very clearly, is we'll turn off the score out of 50. So just uncheck that. What you need to do is describe the pattern on each street. I think that's going to be kind of the simplest. For group 1, we started our survey along Glebe Home and then went clockwise around the block. So you might as well start on your first street and describe them in order, especially if you didn't make it right to the end of the survey. So Glebe Home Boulevard, we'll go back to our map journal, and let's type in Glebe Home Boulevard, and we can do a colon there. And if we go back how would you describe the pattern or what the size of the scores kind of looks like? And we want to think about the words regular, irregular, as well as clustered or dispersed. So thinking first about whether our symbols here are in a regular or irregular pattern, how would you describe that? I would say it's kind of irregular because we sort of go up and down and in the middle and up and down and up and down. So we kind of have an irregular pattern here. And is it clustered or dispersed? And we seem to have some clusters. So we've got a cluster of sort of low score and a cluster of medium scores and another cluster of low and then back up. So irregular, clustered would kind of be the best way to describe that. What we'd want to type here, in this case for Glebe Home, scores appear to be clustered irregularly. Do another bullet. And our next street is Monarch Park Avenue. We can go back to our original map, taking a look at Monarch Park. Is it a regular distribution? Will they all kind of look the same? Or irregular? Again, it kind of looks irregular. And is it clustered or dispersed? In this case, it looks a little bit more dispersed than our Glebe Home did. We could come back. Scores appear to be dispersed irregularly. And so on, going through your 4 streets. If you like, you can also, make things stand out a little bit. You could make street names bold. You could change the color, but just be consistent so that it looks nice and professional. Click in the space under Influence. And what I mean by influence is if we take a look at our scores, does it look like neighbors influence each other? So in the sense of Glebe Home, we have more scores kind of looking similar. Does that mean that our neighbors are being influenced by each other? What would you think? As opposed to, let's say, Wolverley, where we have, big changes in the scores in places. Does it look like neighbors are being influenced by each other down there? Not so much as Glebe Home. And the same can be said for Monarch Park. We have big changes in our scores. Linsmore, not so big changes. So, again, for each of your streets, we want to rate the influence of neighbors. So we'll click on bullets. Now what we can do is, let's just be consistent here. Copy this, and then we can paste them in. Let's again do it by our 4 streets, and we'll leave those other ones. So for influence on Glebe Home, we could say that yes, there appears to be neighborly influence. Monarch Park, no, there appears to be little influence, and so on. For improvements, let's take a look at each street and what looks like the thing to be improved the most. And to help us out, we can take a look at some of the different things that we were scoring. So if we go back to our symbols, and we've been mapping it by total score, but let's change that. So let's try looking at front not paved. And now we get a different set of scores here. For Glebe Home, it looks like our front not paved is kind of the same distribution as our total score, not necessarily giving us a clear picture there. We could look at the driveway parking pad. Again, those are scored lower than our percent not paved, so maybe we could say they need to improve on their driveway material. Disconnected downspouts, pretty typically disconnected. There's just a couple that weren't, so that's not going to be something to improve. Container gardening, we have, this is kind of yes or no, so all the ones that are yes and all the ones that are no. For Glebe Home, it's not really the biggest thing to fix. There's a lot that have container gardening. Mulch on garden. There we go. We have lots of low scores, and this is consistent on most of the streets, except for Linsmore. So for Glebe Home, we could say improvements. Adding more mulch on the garden beds. Take a look at Monarch Park. It's a little bit more than half need to do mulch. So again, we can actually, rain barrel is going to be the biggest thing for all of them. So let's go back and let's do both. Adding rain barrels and more mulch on garden beds. Those are the two big things. And that's going to certainly be most of the streets. Rain barrel will be the first thing. What else here? Walkway. Walkways, again, something that certainly for Linsmore could be the other thing. So rain barrel and change the walkway material. But it's kind of neat to go through and just take a look at the individual things here, and you'll need to check your guide to rating scales to make sure you pick the Team A ones or the Team B ones appropriately, because they're all alphabetical in here, which is a little bit less helpful, but there you go. So continue for your 4 streets, 1 or 2 most things to improve. Team B results. What we can do for this one is let's just hit cancel so that we keep the total score. We were just sort of playing there. And if we turn on the score out of 50 again, we can kind of do a quick comparison as to the score that your team got versus the score that the other team got. So where it looks like the red box is much bigger than the box that you have for your score, probably the other team boosted the score of the property. And if we click on it, we can see that we got, I think this is the big square, because it's a score over 25. So the combination was 26, and if we click our arrow, we can see what our score was. It was 10. So Team B added 16 points and Team A added 10. And where you see the red box not being bigger at all or very little, like over here, that means the Team B score added very little. So there's the total score at a 19, and Team A added 11. So it was 11 versus 8. So certainly Team A added more than Team B. Where they look kind of, like double the size, then it's probably an even distribution. So like this one here, score of 24 and 12. So it's exactly even from both teams. So that house is sort of balanced between the two surveys. So you can talk about whether the houses in general look like they're balanced between the Team A and Team B surveys or unbalanced. In general, I would say that they look unbalanced. There's more scores here that, the difference between the two is not even. So we just want to do a quick sentence about this. And what this tells us is that the homeowner was better at one survey than the other. And you may find that your block, they are balanced. That in general, the homeowners are good at creating habitat and being water wise. And you can, flesh that out a little bit more for yourself. Now, the other observation, again, we probably want to stick just to your team score, but you could talk about the total between the two. But if we go back to our symbols, what can you say about anything really? So the xeriscaping. Is there an interesting pattern that you see for your block? For me, it could be interesting that it's clustered by street, where maybe there's a big influence on neighbors about planting those kind of grasses. Whereas down here and on Linsmore, they're perhaps doing more traditional lawns, and that's mostly what they have. But whatever you guys want to add for this last one, you can use our language that we were using before, whether it's clustered or dispersed or regular or irregular, all of that is good. Once you've completed all the parts, click on Add, and we've got our last bit there. Let's do a small change here just to make our layers a bit more explicit since we're here. So let's click on the three dots. Let's go to Rename. And all we need to do for our team data is just add what group number we are. So we're group 1A, or team 1A. So should have added that earlier, but we can do that now. So team 1A scored a 25. And then for our score out of 50, let's rename that one to what group you are. So group 1, score out of 50. And click OK for that.